Our guest in the Climate Optimist is a person I really deeply admire. That's Bertrand Piccard. He's Swiss. He's one of the great explorers of our time, the first person to circumvent the planet Earth in a solar-powered airplane. But he's also a person who really wants to drive solutions to the climate and environment crisis. And I admire him also because he makes fighting for the environment fun and exciting. He doesn't believe that we can bore people into action, but we need to really make climate action exciting to the world. Welcome, Bertrand.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for this invitation.
We really like to start with a few words about your background. I know you come from a family of explorers, so exploring the world may have come to you with your mother's or father's milk. But tell us the background and how you decided to go on this absolutely incredible travel to circumvent the planet in a solar aircraft.
You know, the examples I had when I was a child was my grandfather being the first man in the stratosphere and my father becoming the first man to reach the deepest spot in the ocean, in the Mariana Trench. And both did it to explore the environment, to make a contribution to the protection of humankind. So I also wanted, of course, to become an explorer. And I think I got like a compass in my heart with a needle showing the unknown all the time, showing what had not yet been done. And my first personal big adventure was to fly nonstop around the world in a balloon. And then I thought, okay, now I have the credibility, I have the recognition to do something really useful and to get the support for it. And this was the Solar Impulse project, where I had to raise a lot of funding, put a huge team together, and have the first airplane ever that could fly day and night without fuel. And with solar cells, this plane could fly around the world. And my real goal here, my target was to have people finally understand that renewable energies and clean technologies can achieve impossible goals. And if we can do it in the air, of course, we can do it everywhere on the ground.
I guess when the Wright brothers brought the first airplane up in the air, 99.9% of humanity would have said it's impossible. When you started making a solar plane, close to 99.9% of humans would have said that's also impossible. How did you overcome this resistance? How did you embark upon this when most people say you can't do it?
You know, it's fabulous when everybody tells you it's impossible because you really feel that you are a pioneer. And this attracted a lot of talents in the team. If your adventure is easy, you get lazy people in the team. But if something is considered to be impossible, you have so many pioneers, so many genius minds who come, who are completely devoted, who work together for the purpose. And now that it has been achieved, it's really a proof that we should never say it's impossible, because the impossible does not exist in the reality. The impossible exists in the mindset of the people who keep old patterns of thinking and doing.
But Bertrand, I used to fly it too. I had my own plane. I was sitting up in the cockpit just like you're doing here, albeit in a fossil-driven plane. I wonder what it felt like. When I was flying, part of the beauty of it was the sunsets and sunrises that I had. I saw so much beautiful in the atmosphere. The other part was I was always watching the fuel gauge, notably going across water. What did it feel like to go around the world in this way?
I wanted to fly without fuel gauge. It is so wonderful. You know, with a fuel gauge, the needle always goes down. And with a solar airplane, the energy goes up. The more you fly, the more energy you have. And you see a sunset. It's beautiful. You enter in the night, and you have the batteries that have been charged during the day that give you the energy. And you just go through the night. You know you're going to have the sunrise, another day, another sunset, another sunrise, and you can fly forever or almost forever. and you have a perpetual endurance. And it's a prototype that has never existed. And it flies with no noise, no pollution, no fuel. And I tell you, there's a moment I thought, wow, I'm like in the future, it's a science fiction movie. And then I understood that no, it was just what the technologies of today allowed me to do today. And this was like a revelation, because this is the moment I really understood how much the rest of the world was in the past, not me in the future, but the rest of the world in the past, with old, inefficient, polluting systems, devices, technologies, sources of energy, all what has to be modernized if we want to fight climate change.
A great example for us all. And notably, the quietness of it must have been wonderful.
But it's like in an electric car, you know, for the people who drive an electric car, it's impossible to go back to a thermal engine, because here also you have no noise, you have no vibrations, you have a better torque, better acceleration, you have better performance. So this is also a message I want to give to everyone. Fighting climate change means that we are doing better. We have a better quality of life. We have better technologies. We are going for the best, not going backward. And it's like this for all these new technologies that start to exist today to protect the environment. It's an advantage. It's not a handicap.
And the real danger, the most dangerous thing for business is to do nothing. I just read Bill Gates' book about how to avoid the climate catastrophe. And he says it's 4 things: less fossil fuel, less cement, less steel, and less agriculture or less meat. How does those 4 items correspond with your action points of 1,000 projects?
If you speak of fighting climate change like this, you are 20 years back in the past. I think Bill Gates is just starting to understand what is climate change. And I'm sorry to say, but to say less fuel, less meat, less this, nobody will care, nobody will be motivated. You have to give exactly the opposite message. If you want to fight climate change, you need more renewable energies, you need more efficiency, you need to use the resources of the environment in a better way. You need to modernize the regulations. So don't show the problem, give the solutions. Don't say all these problems here are gigantic. No, this has been said for 40 years, we know that. Now we have to tell how to use less fossil energy, how to be better in the agriculture, how to be better in the efficiency, how we can have new opportunities to use the waste as a resource. No, these are the solutions, I'm sorry to say, but if you want to give 4 ways to fight climate change, give something positive, not something negative.
Let's focus a little bit on flying. I mean, it's not the biggest source of emissions, but it's one source of emission. What do you see as the future of flights? The electric? Can your sort of solar plane be taken to scale in some way? What's the future of flying?
The future of flying is a progressive evolution of technology linked to the carbon offset for all the passengers. Today, we can be maybe 15-20% better in terms of fuel efficiency with direct routes, constant descent approaches, APU off on the airport, directly fed with the electricity from renewable energy, electric chariots or trailers to bring the airplane on the threshold. You can do that, but there is still about 80% that you cannot address with the current technologies. And this has to be compensated with a carbon offset. Each passenger pays his contribution to CO2 that he emits. And then you will increase the part of the technology, which means that you will decrease the part that needs to be offset. And we will increase technology by having, for small airplanes, you can have batteries. That's clear, it's very efficient. For big airplanes, it will probably be too heavy to carry big batteries. So it will probably be hydrogen. It will probably be biofuel. or synthetic kerosene. This is a very interesting thing, the e-fuel. You take the CO2 captured from the chimneys of the factories, you combine it with a clean hydrogen produced by solar or wind power, and you reconstitute the molecule of kerosene. But it's a carbon neutral kerosene because you take the CO2 from the chimneys of the industries. So there are a lot of things we can do in order to have a cleaner aviation. And it's interesting to see that Airbus has announced a hydrogen plane and clean aviation for 2035. And there's a lot of people who say it's impossible, it's too soon, in 15 years we cannot do it. But no, they will do it. And aviation is an absolutely fantastic source of innovation and inspiration. And aviation has to contribute to fighting climate change by showing that all these new innovations are used.
We believe that Norway have certain advantages to be a trial place for electric aircraft because we have probably more short runways than any other place in the world. I think in the northernmost county of Norway, Finnmark, there are about 20 airports for 60,000, 70,000 people. So there are any number of short-haul aircraft. And our main domestic carrier for this, Widerøe, just said that by 2026, they believe that they can have aircraft bringing 9 passengers in commercial flights. You agree to this?
Yes, there was a fantastic announcement by the Minister of Transport of Norway a few years ago saying that in 2040, only electric airplanes will be used in Norway. This is courageous, and it shows that if you have one big announcement like this, it will open the way to all the industries complying to the goal and bringing the solutions and implementing them. So when we say electric, we really have to understand that it can be electricity produced in the air by the solar panels like solar impulse, but this is not very likely to happen for electric airplanes. It can be batteries, in this case, that would be charged on the ground by solar cells on the airports, or it can be electric engines that are activated by a fuel cell thanks to hydrogen. So there is a lot of possibilities, and I'm really very curious to see what will happen, what the world of aviation will retain as a technology to comply with this fantastic goal of electric airplanes flying in Norway by 2040.
One advantage with electric flights, as Jens and yourself touched upon, is of course that they will be without sound. However, isn't that also a little bit scary? Because today it's the sound from the aircraft which keeps us believing that everything is fine. If there is no sound, we start becoming afraid. You had none of that feeling when you went around the planet without any sounds?
No, because you know the sound that is disturbing is usually heard by the people on the ground, not by the pilot. The pilot, he can see the propellers turning. He has all the instrument panel. There's a little whistle from the propellers, or if it will be with jet engines and hydrogen, you will hear a little bit in the cockpit, but it will be silent for the people on the ground, which means that you can operate the airplanes at night in urban airports. And I believe this is really something that will be a huge advantage for the flight operations if you disturb nobody.
Now, you're a psychiatrist, and we are here in a group that we're all convinced that climate change is the biggest challenge we have as humanity. A big minority of people do not think so. We have warned about a crisis in the pandemic, climate change, and you see, it seems that people are very slow in reacting. The pandemic is very interesting. It was forecast, nothing happened. It came, and we acted with great speed and great force. I'm wondering if we can hope for the same with climate change. I'm a little less optimistic when I see what's happening in Australia. They have one day they have big fires, next day they have big floods, yet a majority of Australians seem to be negative to doing something about climate change. What's your observation? about what it takes to turn people's mind around and to get the same sort of action on climate change as we now have on the pandemic?
The climate change is something progressive that will be very dangerous in a few decades. The COVID crisis was something immediate. We had to react immediately. And this is the big difference between the two. So I believe that it's very important when we speak of climate change to say that it's not only something for the future as a danger, but it's also something today as an opportunity if we fight climate change. So telling people that climate change is a big problem that will be very expensive to solve and will require a lot of sacrifice in our behavior, mobility, comfort, growth, and consumption will scare everybody, will create a lot of resistance. So we have to show that even if there was no climate change, it would be logical as much as ecological to implement new technologies that are more efficient, that are saving natural resources, saving money, and giving business opportunities. And this is what was lacking. No, it's lacking. If you just tell to people it's a problem and we have to reduce our lifestyle, nobody will like it. And this is why with the Solar Impulse Foundation, I'm really spending my time showing everything that is financially profitable, everything that creates jobs, and that allows to replace what is polluting by what is protecting the environment. And this is what I call the qualitative growth. I'm very afraid by degrowth that will bring a social chaos, but I'm also afraid by the so-called unlimited growth that brings us ecological disaster. So we need a third way, which is the qualitative growth. You create jobs and make profits by replacing what is polluting by what is protecting the environment. And if we were explaining that a little bit more, we would be more successful. I think there are a lot of type of people. You have the people who are afraid to change because they have a system working and they think it will be too difficult to do something new. You have people who are a bit ignorant about the real impact of what they do. And you have people who are completely selfish, who don't care about anything else than their personal profit. And this is why we need regulations. We need regulations that are modern, that at the same time become an incentive for the people who want to do good, and that will prevent the selfish people to destroy the rest of humankind for their personal interest.
I think this is a very important point. As I look at the past 12 months, there's been a sea change in the attitude of business in the world. Business used to be a laggard in climate change. Now they're really in the forefront. And you see heavy investment going into climate change, going into renewable energy. And it's a boom, it's a green boom that almost is too much. But it does give me a lot of optimism about the future to see that the market now is a driving force. Do you think, is that enough, or do we need regulation on top of it?
We need everything. We need everything because today the regulation is based on very old technologies, which means that the standards, the norms are far too laid back. They are not ambitious enough. What we need is to modernize the legal framework in order to make it match with the reality that is generated by the technologies of today. For example, if a car can reduce by 80% the particles, toxic particles emitted, why should we continue to allow 100% when the system, the new technologies allow 20%? So we have to modernize the regulation frame. But it's true that the investment sector is also very important. If you have a pension fund, if you have a life insurance, you are not going to put your money into oil, gas, and coal companies, knowing that the asset will probably be divided by 2 in 15 or 20 years because it will be stranded assets like the subprimes. So you will invest on the long term on something that has a future, not something that has no future. Now, it's true that we cannot blame the old industries because they are just producing what people are still using. The oil companies are polluting less than the consumers of this oil. So we have to be objective. Instead of seeing the devil outside, we should see how we can become better ourselves. And we need to help the oil industries to diversify. We need to support them in their efforts. When you see a company like Total in France, who has set very clear targets of making more electricity, more hydrogen, and less oil, this has to be encouraged. And there are interesting examples. You know, in the portfolio of the 1,000 solutions that we have identified, you have a solution that is called Celsius, which comes from Schlumberger. Schlumberger is drilling for oil. And Celsius, a spin-off that they have launched, is drilling for heat in geothermia. And they have a system that can install heat pumps in all the buildings in the center of the cities. That's an advantage. We have to speak about all these good things. So it's not enough to say we need less oil. That's wishful thinking. We need to show how we can replace the supply of oil by something new that creates more jobs, that makes more profit, that is more efficient, that is cleaner, and that is really where the investors will put their money for the future.
Very interestingly, the same ideas you put forward are now embraced by the two most powerful people on planet Earth. President Xi Jinping of China says that green is gold. Going green can increase the prosperity of the Chinese people and give any number of jobs. And when Joe Biden launched his climate policy for the United States, it was all about the benefits. How can America get jobs and a better life while taking care of Mother Earth? You have any advice? How can we set out this message, this critical message, in such a positive term?
The message is fantastic. This is exactly what people must hear. Now, the next step is to show how to do it. What are the technologies that are really creating jobs? Which are the technologies that are really helping the fight against climate change? And this is exactly what we do with the 1,000 solution that we have selected at the Solar Impulse Foundation. And we are ready to offer this toolkit, if we can say like this, to all the big governments of the planet. Because all the solutions we have identified, whether they come from startups or from big companies, they are useful in the field of water, energy, construction, mobility, industry, and agriculture. And they can be a technology, a device, a system, a product, a material, a system. And there are more than 1,000 of them now. Can you imagine? 1,000 of them. It's a lot. They cover everything we need. But we need to take them out of the toolkit and use them, implement them in absolutely every sector of our life. And I'm always joking with the theory of the piranha as an analogy. You know, the piranha, this little fish, it's quite small. And when one of them comes to you and bites you, you hardly feel it. But when you have 1,000 of piranhas arriving to you, they eat you in 3 minutes and you are a skeleton. All the meat is gone. And this is what we have to do with 1,000 solutions. There is not one solution that brings a miracle. But the fact that you have 1,000 solutions together, this is a miracle in itself.
Tell us about this 1,000 solution in detail. I mean, I'm a young entrepreneur in Norway. I have a great idea. I want it to be listed among your 1,000 solutions. How do I go about to do that? Or I am someone who can benefit from all these ideas. How do I chop into your ideas? How does it work?
To submit the solution, you go on the website solarimpulse.com, the website of my foundation, and you can submit a solution. You have to fill up a submission form, that will go to our group of experts. We have between 350 and 420 experts, depending when they have time, and they're independent, completely independent, and they will assess the solutions under the angle of the credibility. It needs to be feasible today, not a vague idea for the future, something for today, working, being ready to go on the market or already on the market. It needs to be profitable for the company who produces it and for the consumer. The consumer needs to save money when he buys this product. And it needs, of course, to protect the environment on the entire life cycle of the product. If the three criteria are met, the company receives for this product the Solar Impulse Efficient Solution label. And actually, it's the first label in the world that certifies the financial profitability of a product that is environmentally friendly. And now, if you are on the other side and you are the one who needs solutions, you have the list of solutions available on the website, but we will go one step further this summer. We will create a guide. It's an algorithm with all the questions that people can ask in order to find the answer.
What a treasure trove of ideas. And I think it's very important for us in business to know that there are ideas out there and we can go and pick them up. I must say also it's been very refreshing to listen to your fresh takes and ideas, and notably that you look at solutions, not problems, and your basic point that we should not consume less, we should consume differently, we should have a better life, but a different life that we have in the moment. Your example and how you live and what you've done is a great example for us all. Thank you.
Thank you for this possibility of discussing together, because your program is very, very important to the world. Climate Optimists, that's really important. And having the opportunity to present what I'm doing with prestigious hosts like you, it's wonderful. And Eric, it's great to see you again. I'm still a goodwill ambassador of the United Nations for Environment. We've been working together when you were leading the UNEP, and meeting again in this broadcast is a big, big pleasure. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Bertrand. It has been a pleasure, and you are the kind of people who really inspire the world to do better, and we will do better.
Let's do better all together, absolutely.